She was 18 years old, kicked out of her childhood home, and she had exactly $247 to her name. 2 days ago, Maya had a bedroom. A closet full of clothes she'd outgrown but couldn't afford to replace. A desk where she studied for the SATs she'd never get to take. Now she had a duffel bag, a backpack, and the back seat of a 2004 Honda Civic with a cracked windshield and an engine that sputtered every time she turned the key. Her mother's boyfriend had made it simple. "You're 18 now. Legal adult. Time to go." Her mother didn't argue. Didn't even look at her. Just stood in the kitchen with her arms crossed while Maya stuffed everything she could carry into trash bags. No goodbyes. No apologies. Just the sound of the door locking behind her as she dragged her life down the driveway. That was 48 hours ago. Now, she was parked behind a gas station on the edge of town, engine off to save what little fuel she had left. The sun had set an hour ago, and the temperature was dropping fast. She pulled her jacket tighter and stared at the receipts scattered across the passenger seat. Gas. Dollar store soap. A loaf of bread and peanut butter that would last her maybe 3 more days. $247 left. That was it. She pressed her forehead against the steering wheel and closed her eyes. The smell of old French fries and stale air freshener filled the car. Her phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. Probably a scam. She didn't bother checking. Sleep came in fragments. 20 minutes. Wake up. Adjust the seat. Try again. Her neck ached. Her ribs pressed against the seatbelt. Every sound outside made her flinch: footsteps, voices, the hiss of air brakes from a truck pulling into the lot. By dawn, she gave up. She started the car and drove with no destination. Just movement. Just something to do that wasn't sitting still in her own failure. The streets were empty. The sky was pale and colorless. She turned down a road she'd only been on once before, years ago, and that's when she saw it. A handwritten sign staked into the grass at the edge of a gravel driveway. Estate sale. Everything must go. Her foot hit the brake before her brain caught up. She knew this place. The driveway was long and overgrown, weeds pushing up through the gravel like the earth was trying to reclaim it. At the end sat a barn. Not the picturesque kind you see in paintings. This one was leaning, its red paint peeling in long strips, the roof sagging in the middle like a broken spine. Behind it, wild grass stretched out for what looked like acres, tangled with blackberry bushes and rusted fence posts. Her grandmother's property. Maya's hands tightened on the wheel. She hadn't been here in 6 months. Not since the funeral. Not since they lowered the casket into the ground and everyone pretended to care for an hour before going back to their lives. Her grandmother had lived alone out here for as long as Maya could remember. No phone. No internet. Just the barn, the land, and her bees. Maya used to spend summers here when she was little, back when her mother still let her. Back when things were different. She pulled into the driveway and parked next to a pickup truck with a realtor's magnet on the door. A man in a polo shirt was standing near the barn, clipboard in hand, talking to an older couple who looked like they were just killing time. Maya got out of the car. Her legs felt weak. She hadn't eaten since yesterday. The man noticed her and walked over, smiling in that practiced way people do when they're trying to sell you something. "Morning. You here for the sale?" She nodded, not trusting her voice yet. "Well, you're in luck. We've got tools, furniture, some antiques if you're into that sort of thing. The land and structure are also available if you're interested. $10. She blinked. What? The property. Barn and all the acreage. $10. No one wants it. Condemned structure, no utilities, access roads a mess. We just need it off the books. $10. For her grandmother's land. The place where she'd learned to be still. To listen. To exist without needing to apologize for it. Her throat tightened. If you've ever felt like you had nothing left to lose, hit that subscribe button and drop your country in the comments below. She looked at the barn. At the peeling paint. The broken windows. The door hanging off one hinge. It was a wreck. A liability. A project that would take thousands of dollars and months of work she didn't have. But it was hers. Or it could be. She thought about her grandmother. About the last time they'd spoken, 3 weeks before she died. A phone call Maya had been too busy to take. A voicemail she'd never listened to. She thought about sleeping in her car. About $247. About winter coming in 2 months. "I'll take it," she said. The man raised his eyebrows. "The property?" "Yes." He handed her the clipboard. She signed her name on a line that felt too simple for what it meant. He took a $10 bill from her hand, money she couldn't afford to lose, and gave her a receipt and a key that looked like it hadn't been used in years. "All yours," he said. "Good luck." The couple left. The realtor left. The gravel driveway went quiet. Maya stood in front of the barn, key in hand, and stared at the building that now belonged to her. The sun was setting behind it, casting long shadows across the overgrown field. The air smelled like dry grass and distant rain. She had no plan. No money. No idea what she was doing. But for the first time in 2 days, she wasn't sitting in the back of her car waiting for something to change. She was standing on solid ground. And she had no idea what came next. The key didn't want to turn. Maya had to wiggle it, push her shoulder against the barn door, and twist hard before the lock finally gave way with a sound like something breaking. The door swung open, and the smell hit her first. Dust. Old wood. Something sweet and faint underneath it all, like honey left too long in the sun. She stepped inside, and the floorboards groaned under her weight. Sunlight filtered through gaps in the roof, cutting through the darkness in thin, golden beams. It looked exactly the way she remembered. And nothing like it at all. The workbench was still against the far wall, covered in tools she recognized, rusty pliers, a hammer with a wooden handle worn smooth, jars filled with nails and screws. Her grandmother's boots sat by the door, caked in dried mud, laces still tied like she'd just stepped out of them. A flannel jacket hung on a nail, one sleeve inside out. Maya's chest tightened. She was 8 the first time her grandmother brought her out here. It was summer, and her mother had dropped her off without explanation, just a duffel bag and a warning to behave. Maya had been terrified. Her grandmother was strange. Quiet. Didn't own a TV. Didn't talk much. Just worked. But that first morning, her grandmother had handed her a beekeeper's veil and said, "You want to see something magic?" They'd walked out to the hives together, and her grandmother had shown her how to move slowly. How to breathe steady. How to listen to the hum and know if the bees were calm or agitated. She'd opened a hive box, and Maya had watched, wide-eyed, as thousands of bees moved across the frames in perfect rhythm. "They're smarter than people," her grandmother had said. "They know how to work together. How to protect what matters. You could learn something from them." Maya had spent every summer here after that. Learning. Listening. Feeling, for the first time in her life, like she wasn't in the way. Her grandmother never asked her about school. Never asked why she was so quiet or why she flinched when someone raised their voice. She just let Maya exist. Let her sit in silence. Let her be. That was more than anyone else had ever given her. Maya blinked, and the memory dissolved. She moved deeper into the barn. The table where they used to extract honey was still there, the old hand crank extractor covered in cobwebs. She ran her fingers along the edge, and dust came away in clumps. Everything was exactly where it had been. Frozen in time. Except her grandmother was gone. Maya's throat burned. She swallowed hard and kept moving. In the corner, she found the old rocking chair her grandmother used to sit in while she wrote. The cushion was faded, the wood scratched and worn. Next to it was a stack of wooden crates, and on top of those, barely visible under a layer of grime, was a leather-bound journal. Maya picked it up carefully. The cover was cracked, the edges frayed. She opened it, and the pages crackled like dry leaves. Her grandmother's handwriting. Neat. Deliberate. Each entry dated. She flipped through slowly. Notes about the hives. Weather patterns. Bloom cycles. Sketches of bees in the margins. Recipes for salves and tinctures. It was all so methodical. So her. Maya smiled despite herself. But as she turned the pages, something shifted. The entries became shorter. Less detailed. The handwriting, once steady, started to slant. Some lines were scratched out. Others trailed off mid-sentence. She stopped on a page dated 3 years ago. June 14th, Hive 7 acting strange. Won't open. Need to. That was it. The sentence just ended. Maya frowned and turned the page. Blank. She flipped forward. More blank pages. Then, near the back, a single line written in shaky letters. If anything happens to me, the truth is in the last hive. Maya's pulse quickened. She read it again. The truth is in the last hive. What truth? What was she talking about? She flipped back through the journal, searching for context, but there was nothing. Just that one line, written like a warning, and then silence. Her grandmother had stopped writing 3 years ago. Stopped documenting. Stopped everything. Why? Maya closed the journal and looked around the barn. The hives. Where were the hives? She'd seen them as a kid, rows of white boxes out in the field, bees moving between them like a living current. But she hadn't been back here in years. Hadn't thought to ask. Hadn't known her grandmother was sick until it was too late. She stood and walked toward the back door of the barn, the journal still clutched in her hand. The door was stuck, swollen from moisture, but she shoved it open and stepped outside. The field stretched out before her, wild and overgrown. The grass was waist-high, tangled with weeds and thorny vines. In the distance, she could see the outline of fence posts, leaning at odd angles. And then she heard it. Faint. Almost imperceptible. A buzzing sound. Not the hum of insects in the grass. Something deeper. Rhythmic. Coming from somewhere beyond the overgrown brush at the edge of the property. Maya's breath caught. She stepped forward, the journal pressed against her chest, and stared into the tangle of blackberry bushes and wild growth. Something was out there. And it was waiting. The buzzing grew louder as Maya pushed through the overgrown grass. Blackberry vines caught on her jeans, thorns scraping her arms, but she kept moving. The sound was coming from beyond the thicket, somewhere deep in the tangle of brush that had swallowed the back edge of the property. She used her forearm to shield her face and forced her way through. Branches snapped. Leaves rustled. And then, suddenly, the growth thinned. She stopped. In front of her was a small clearing, hidden from view by years of wild growth. The grass here was shorter, trampled down in places like someone, or something, had walked through recently. And there, arranged in a crooked line along the clearing's edge, were 7 beehive boxes. Maya's breath caught. They were old. Weathered. The white paint had long since peeled away, leaving behind gray, splintered wood. Some were tilted at angles, their bases rotting into the earth. Others had pieces missing, frames pulled out, roofs caved in. But they were her grandmother's hives. She was sure of it. The buzzing she'd heard wasn't coming from the boxes themselves. It was coming from the trees overhead, wild bees moving through the branches, unaware of the ruins below. But the sound had drawn her here. Had pulled her to this place she'd forgotten existed. Maya stepped closer, her shoes squelching in the damp earth. The first hive box was completely collapsed, its wooden slats scattered across the ground like broken ribs. She crouched down and peered inside. Empty. Nothing but rotted comb and dirt. The second box was in slightly better shape, but when she lifted the lid, it came apart in her hands. More emptiness. More decay. She moved down the line. 3, 4, 5, 6. All of them the same. Abandoned. Hollowed out. Reclaimed by time. But the seventh box, the last one, was different. It stood apart from the others, set back a few feet, half hidden behind a wild rosebush that had grown up around it. The wood was dark, almost black in places, stained by weather and age. But it wasn't rotting. It wasn't falling apart. It was sealed. Maya's pulse quickened. Heavy iron nails had been driven into the top and sides, holding the lid shut. Thick chains wrapped around the entire structure, looped through the handles and padlocked at the front. The metal was rusted, corroded by years of rain and humidity, but it was still intact. Still locked. This wasn't how beekeepers stored hives. This wasn't preservation. This was containment. Maya knelt in front of it, her hands hovering over the chains. They were cold to the touch, rough with rust. She tugged at the padlock. It didn't budge. Why would her grandmother do this? What was inside? She ran her fingers along the edges of the box, searching for gaps, for any way to see inside. But the wood was flush. The nails were driven deep. Whoever had sealed this, her grandmother, had done it thoroughly. Maya sat back on her heels, staring at the box like it might offer answers if she looked long enough. The journal. If anything happens to me, the truth is in the last hive. This had to be it. The last hive. The seventh box. But the truth about what? Her grandmother had been eccentric. Private. She didn't talk about her past, didn't share much about her life before the bees. Maya had always assumed it was just her nature. Some people were quiet. Some people didn't need to explain themselves. But now, standing in front of a chained hive box hidden in an overgrown field, Maya wondered if there had been more to it. More her grandmother had never said. She stood and circled the box slowly, examining every angle. The chains were thick, industrial grade, the kind you'd use to secure equipment or livestock. Not something you'd casually have lying around. And the nails, there had to be 20 of them, driven in at odd angles like her grandmother had been in a hurry. Or desperate. Maya gripped the edge of the lid and pulled. The wood groaned but didn't move. She tried again, harder this time, putting her weight into it. Nothing. She grabbed the chains and yanked. The metal bit into her palms, and the padlock rattled but held firm. Frustration flared in her chest. She stepped back, breathing hard, her hands throbbing. There had to be a way in. She thought about the barn. The tools. Her grandmother had everything out there, hammers, saws, pry bars. Something that could break through. Maya took one last look at the sealed hive, committing every detail to memory, then turned and pushed her way back through the overgrown brush. The barn felt darker when she returned, the sunlight fading fast. She moved quickly, scanning the workbench, the shelves, the piles of equipment stacked in the corners. There, a pry bar, half buried under a tarp. She grabbed it, tested its weight. Solid. Heavy enough to do damage. But not tonight. The sun was nearly gone, and the temperature was dropping. She could barely see her own hands in the dim light filtering through the barn's broken windows. Trying to break into the hive box now, in the dark, would be reckless. She needed to see what she was doing. Needed to be careful. She'd come back at dawn. Maya set the pry bar by the door and looked around the barn. She couldn't sleep in her car tonight. Not with the hive box waiting. Not with the questions burning through her mind. She found an old horse blanket folded in a corner, dusty but intact, and spread it out on the floor near the workbench. It smelled like hay and age, but it was better than the back seat of her car. She lay down, her backpack under her head as a pillow, and pulled her jacket tight around her. The barn settled around her, creaks and groans, the sound of wind pushing through the gaps in the walls. Her grandmother had lived here alone for decades. Had slept in this same space. Had walked these same floors. Had sealed a hive box and wrapped it in chains. Maya reached for the journal, lying beside her on the blanket, and opened it to the last written page. The words stared back at her in the fading light. "If anything happens to me, the truth is in the last hive." She read it again. And again. The letters blurred as exhaustion pulled at her, but she couldn't stop looking at them. What truth? What had her grandmother been hiding? And why had she left it for Maya to find? Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the barn door. Somewhere in the distance, she thought she heard that buzzing sound again, faint and rhythmic, like a heartbeat buried in the earth. Maya closed the journal and pressed it against her chest. Tomorrow, she'd find out. Tomorrow, she'd open the last hive. Maya woke to pale gray light filtering through the barn's broken windows. Her body ached from sleeping on the hard floor, and her breath came out in visible clouds. The temperature had dropped overnight, and frost clung to the grass outside. She barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the chained hive box. Heard her grandmother's words echoing in her mind. The truth is in the last hive. She sat up, joints stiff, and reached for the pry bar she'd left by the door. Her fingers were cold, her hands still sore from yesterday's work, but none of that mattered now. No hesitation. No second guessing. She pushed through the barn door and into the morning air. The sky was overcast, heavy with clouds that threatened rain. The field stretched out before her, wild and silent, the overgrown grass wet with dew. She moved quickly, retracing her steps from the day before. The blackberry vines were easier to navigate now that she knew the path. Her jeans were already soaked by the time she reached the clearing, but she didn't care. The seventh hive box stood waiting. The chains looked even more ominous in the morning light. Dark. Deliberate. Final. Maya stopped in front of it, gripping the pry bar with both hands, and for a moment, she hesitated. What if there was nothing inside? What if this was just another dead end, another piece of her grandmother's life that made no sense? She pushed the thought away and wedged the flat end of the pry bar under the edge of the padlock. She pulled. The metal groaned. Rust flaked off in chunks, scattering across the wet ground. She adjusted her grip, braced her foot against the base of the hive box, and tried again, throwing her weight into it. The lock snapped. The sound was sharp and final, cutting through the stillness of the clearing. The chain fell away, hitting the ground with a heavy thud that echoed across the empty field. Maya's hands were shaking now. She dropped the pry bar and gripped the edges of the hive box lid. The nails were still in place, driven deep into the wood. She worked them loose one by one, using the claw end of the pry bar to pull them free. Some came out easily. Others required force, the wood splintering around them as she pried them up. By the time she pulled the last one free, her palms were blistered and streaked with rust. She tossed the pry bar aside and gripped the lid with both hands. She lifted it. No bees. No comb. No honey. Instead, wrapped in layers of oilcloth and nestled in the center of the box, was a metal lockbox. Waterproof. Industrial. The kind used for important documents or valuables you couldn't afford to lose. Maya's breath caught. She reached in and pulled it out carefully, surprised by the weight of it. Heavy. Solid. Real. She set it on the ground in front of her and peeled back the oilcloth. The lockbox was pristine, untouched by moisture, dust, or decay. No rust. No damage. Like it had been placed here yesterday. A small combination lock held it shut. Maya stared at it, her mind racing. A combination. What would her grandmother use? She tried her own birthday. Nothing. Her grandmother's birthday. Nothing. The date of the funeral. Nothing. Then, on instinct, she tried the date her grandmother had stopped writing in the journal. June 14th. 3 years ago. The numbers clicked into place. The lock popped open. Maya's hands trembled as she lifted the lid. Inside were stacks of cash. Crisp bills, rubber-banded together in tight bundles. 20s. 50s. Hundreds. She pulled one stack out, then another, her breath coming faster now. She started counting under her breath, but there was too much. She gave up and just stared. Thousands of dollars. Tens of thousands. Her vision blurred. She sat back hard, the money still clutched in her hands, her heart pounding so loud she could hear it in her ears. $43,000. Hidden in a chained hive box in the middle of an overgrown field that no one even knew existed. Her grandmother had left her $43,000. Maya's throat tightened. She pressed the heel of her hand against her eyes, trying to breathe, trying to process what she was looking at. 2 days ago, she'd had $247 and a car she was living out of. Now she had this. But that wasn't all. Beneath the cash was a thick manila envelope, yellowed with age. She set the money aside carefully and opened the envelope with shaking fingers. Photographs spilled out. Old ones. Faded. Black and white. People she didn't recognize, men and women in work clothes, standing in front of buildings she'd never seen. Some were smiling. Others looked serious, tired. Her grandmother was in a few of them, younger than Maya had ever known her, smiling in a way she'd never seen before. There was life in those photos. Energy. A version of her grandmother Maya had never met. Beneath the photos was a folded document, thick and official-looking. She opened it carefully, smoothing out the creases. A land deed. Her grandmother's name at the top, printed in bold letters. And below it, a description of the property. 40 acres. Not just the barn. Not just the field she was standing in. 40 acres of land. Maya read it twice. Then a third time. Her grandmother had owned 40 acres, and no one had ever mentioned it. Not at the funeral. Not during the estate sale. The realtor had sold her the barn and the acreage for $10 like it was nothing. Like it had been forgotten. Or deliberately hidden. At the bottom of the envelope was a handwritten letter, folded in thirds. Her name was written across the front in her grandmother's unmistakable script. Maya. She unfolded it slowly, her hands still trembling. And beneath the letter, wrapped in tissue paper, was a small USB drive. If this story is hitting different, smash that like button and subscribe, comment your country so I know where you're watching from. Maya's eyes moved to the letter. The handwriting was shaky in places, uneven, like her grandmother's hands had been unsteady when she wrote it. Like she'd been running out of time. Maya. If you're reading this, I'm gone. And if you found this box, it means you came back. I wasn't sure you would. I don't have much time, so I'll make this quick. The money is yours. All of it. I saved it for years because I didn't trust banks, and I didn't trust the people who wanted this land. It's not a fortune, but it's enough to start. The deed is proof. This property, all 40 acres, is yours now. I made sure of it before I got too sick to think straight. No one else has a claim. No one else deserves it. I know we didn't talk much at the end. I know I wasn't the kind of grandmother who baked cookies or asked about school. But you were the only person who ever looked at me like I wasn't strange. Like I wasn't a burden. And that mattered more than you'll ever know. There's a USB drive in here. Watch it. You'll understand why I did what I did. Why I fought so hard to keep this place. And why I'm leaving it to you. You're the only one strong enough to finish what I started. Don't let them win. Grandma. Maya's throat burned. Her eyes stung, hot and blurry. She read the letter again, then a third time, her grandmother's words sinking in like stones dropping into deep water. You're the only one strong enough to finish what I started. Finish what? Who was trying to win? She set the letter down carefully and picked up the USB drive. It was small, older, the kind that had been used years ago before everything moved to the cloud. She turned it over in her hand, her mind racing with questions she didn't have answers to. Her laptop was back in the car. Ancient. Barely functional. But it had a USB port. She gathered everything, the money, the photos, the deed, the letter, the drive, and carefully placed it all back in the lockbox. She wrapped it in the oilcloth, held it against her chest, and carried it back through the field toward the barn. Her pulse hammered in her ears the entire way. Inside the barn, she set the lockbox down on the workbench and dug her laptop out of her backpack. The screen was cracked in one corner, the battery held almost no charge, but it still worked. She powered it on and waited. The startup screen flickered. The fan whirred loudly, struggling. Finally, the desktop appeared. Maya plugged in the USB drive. A folder appeared on the screen. Inside, one file. A video. The file name was a date. 2 weeks before her grandmother's death. Maya's finger hovered over the trackpad. Her hand was shaking. She clicked. The screen went black for a moment. Then her grandmother's face appeared. The video quality was poor. The image shook slightly, like the camera had been propped up on something unsteady. But her grandmother's face was clear enough. She looked smaller than Maya remembered. Thinner. Her skin had a grayish tint, and the hollows under her eyes were deep and dark. But her expression was sharp. Focused. Like she was using every ounce of strength she had left to say what needed to be said. She was sitting in a wooden chair in front of the barn. The same barn Maya was standing in now. Behind her, the field stretched out, overgrown and wild, just like it was today. Her grandmother cleared her throat and looked directly into the camera. Maya. The sound of her voice hit like a punch to the chest. Maya hadn't heard it in 6 months. Hadn't realized how much she'd missed it until this moment. If you're watching this, it means you found the box. Good. That means you're smarter than I gave you credit for. Or more desperate. Either way, you're here, and that's what matters. Her grandmother shifted in the chair, wincing slightly. Pain. She was in pain. I don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to keep this simple. This land, these 40 acres, they're yours now. I made sure of it. Signed the deed over before I got too sick to hold a pen. No one else has a claim to it. No one else deserves it. She paused, her gaze hardening. But you need to understand what this place is. What I've been trying to protect all these years. Maya leaned closer to the screen, her breath shallow. 30 years ago, I bought this property for almost nothing. It was abandoned. Overgrazed. The soil was dead. Nothing grew here except weeds. But I saw something no one else did. I saw potential. Her grandmother's voice grew stronger, more animated. I started small. Planted native wildflowers. Let the land rest. Stopped using chemicals. And then I brought in the bees. Not honeybees, native bees. The ones people forget about. The ones that don't make honey but pollinate everything that matters. Mason bees. Leafcutter bees. Bumblebees. Species that were disappearing because people kept paving over their habitats. She gestured behind her, toward the field. I turned this place into a sanctuary. A refuge. Somewhere these species could survive. Thrive. I spent decades rebuilding what was destroyed. Replanting. Rewilding. Creating something that would last long after I was gone. Maya's throat tightened. She'd known her grandmother kept bees. But she'd never known it was this. A mission. A life's work. And people hated me for it. Her grandmother's expression darkened. The developers especially. They wanted this land. Wanted to turn it into subdivisions. Strip malls. Parking lots. They came after me for years. Tried to buy me out. Tried to intimidate me. When that didn't work, they tried to take it through eminent domain. Maya's pulse quickened. They claimed the land was needed for public infrastructure. A road expansion project that never existed. It was a lie. A legal trick to force me out. So I fought them. Her grandmother leaned forward, her eyes blazing. I hired a lawyer. Spent every dollar I had fighting them in court. It took 3 years. 3 years of depositions and hearings and sleepless nights. But I won. She smiled, bitter and triumphant. The judge ruled in my favor. Said the eminent domain claim was fraudulent. The corporation had to pay damages. $43,000. Every cent of it is in that lockbox. Maya's chest ached. $43,000. Her grandmother's victory. Her grandmother's sacrifice. I didn't put it in a bank because I didn't trust anyone anymore. Didn't trust the system that tried to steal from me. So I hid it. Kept it safe. Waited. Her grandmother's voice softened. I always hoped you'd come back, Maya. I knew your life wasn't easy. I knew your mother wasn't kind. But I also knew you were stronger than you thought. Stronger than anyone gave you credit for. Tears blurred Maya's vision. She wiped them away quickly, not wanting to miss a single word. That's why I'm leaving this to you. Not because I don't have anyone else, though I don't. But because you're the only person who ever understood what this place means. Who ever looked at the bees and saw what I saw. Magic. Life. Something worth protecting. Her grandmother took a shaky breath. The money is yours. Use it to finish what I started. Expand the sanctuary. Plant more. Protect more. Build something that lasts. Something they can't tear down. She paused, her expression hardening again. Because they're going to try. Maya's stomach dropped. The developers. The corporations. They're not going to stop just because I won once. They'll wait. They'll circle back. They'll find another angle. Another legal loophole. And when they do, you need to be ready. Her grandmother leaned closer to the camera, her voice dropping to something urgent. Desperate. Don't sell, Maya. No matter what they offer. No matter how much money they wave in front of you. This land is worth more than dollars. It's worth something real. Something that can't be replaced. She sat back, her shoulders sagging with exhaustion. I know this is a lot. I know you didn't ask for this. But life doesn't ask permission. It just happens. And now this is yours. The land. The fight. The legacy. Her grandmother's eyes glistened. You were the only person who ever made me feel like I wasn't alone. Like what I was doing mattered. And I need you to know, it did matter. Every flower I planted. Every hive I built. Every lawsuit I fought. It mattered because it kept this place alive. Her voice cracked. And now I need you to keep it alive. She reached toward the camera, her hand trembling. Finish what I started, Maya. Don't let them. The screen flickered. Static. Then nothing. The video ended. Maya stared at the black screen, her heart pounding, her mind reeling. That was it. That couldn't be it. She clicked the file again. It played from the beginning. Her grandmother's face. Her voice. The same words. The same abrupt ending. The video had cut off mid-sentence. Don't let them. Don't let them what? Maya replayed it 3 more times, searching for something she'd missed. A second file. A hidden message. Anything. But there was nothing. Just her grandmother's unfinished warning hanging in the air like smoke. Maya closed the laptop and sat back, her hands shaking. Her grandmother had fought for decades to protect this land. Had spent every dollar she had. Had won a legal battle against a corporation. Had hidden the settlement money in a Hive box because she didn't trust anyone. And now it was Maya's. The land. The money. The fight. All of it. She looked around the barn. At the dusty tools. The broken furniture. The life her grandmother had lived in isolation, fighting a battle no one else knew about. And Maya had never known. She pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to steady her breathing. Finish what I started. But how? She didn't know anything about land conservation. About ecosystems. About fighting corporations. She was 18 years old with a high school diploma and $247 to her name 2 days ago. How was she supposed to finish what her grandmother couldn't? Maya stood and walked to the barn door, pushing it open. The cold air hit her face, sharp and bracing. The field stretched out before her. 40 acres of overgrown wildness. 40 acres her grandmother had spent 30 years protecting. 40 acres that someone still wanted. The thought sent a chill down her spine. They're going to try. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. Maya turned back to the workbench where the lockbox sat, still wrapped in oilcloth. She opened it again and pulled out the manila envelope. The photographs. The deed. The letter. She spread them out across the workbench, searching for something, anything, that might explain what her grandmother had meant. And that's when she saw it. Tucked beneath the photographs, almost hidden, was another piece of paper. Folded. Newer than the rest. She pulled it out and unfolded it carefully. It was a letter. Printed on corporate letterhead. Meridian Development Group. Her blood went cold. The letter was addressed to her grandmother. Dated 2 months ago. 2 months before her grandmother died. Maya's hands trembled as she read. Dear Ms. Hartwell. We are writing to renew our interest in purchasing your property located at 4732, Old Mill Road. As you may recall, we previously expressed interest in this land for commercial development purposes. We are prepared to offer $300,000 for the full 40 acres, including all structures. This is a significant increase from our previous offer and reflects the current market value of the area. We believe this transaction would be mutually beneficial and urge you to consider this offer seriously. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience to discuss terms. Sincerely. Richard Calloway, Senior Acquisitions Manager, Meridian Development Group. Maya read it twice. $300,000. They'd offered her grandmother $300,000. And her grandmother had said no. Maya's chest tightened. The video. The warning. They're coming back. They already had. Maya stared at the letter, her pulse racing. $300,000. A life-changing sum. Enough to never worry about money again. But her grandmother had refused. Had hidden $43,000 in a Hive box instead. Had fought for decades to protect this land from exactly this. Maya folded the letter slowly and looked out at the field. 40 acres of wildflowers her grandmother had spent 30 years planting. Native bees that depended on this sanctuary to survive. A legacy built on sacrifice and stubbornness. And now Meridian Development Group wanted to pave it over. Her grandmother's final words echoed in her mind. Don't let them win. Maya's jaw tightened. She picked up the letter and read it one more time. Then she tore it in half. They weren't getting this land. Not now. Not ever. 6 months later, the field was unrecognizable. Maya stood at the edge of 40 acres transformed. Native wildflowers bloomed in waves of purple, yellow, and white. Sustainable hives dotted the landscape, bees moving between them in perfect rhythm. She'd used every dollar of the $43,000. Hired conservation experts. Planted indigenous species. Restored what her grandmother had started. The barn was rebuilt. The land designated as protected habitat. Meridian Development had sent 3 more letters. She'd ignored them all. Maya knelt in the grass, her grandmother's journal in her hands, and wrote a new entry. The last hive held everything I needed. Not just money. A reason to keep going. She looked at her grandmother's photograph, tears streaming down her face. I finished it, she whispered. The bees hummed around her. The legacy lived on.